Hi, everybody. Jennifer Griswold here. You are watching our Facebook forum. We are calling it Parenting in the Pandemic. Obviously, we know parenting always has challenges. It's wonderful, but it has challenges. And during the pandemic, we see some new challenges, or some of those challenges we've already had somewhat elevated. So we've compiled a panel of experts to be there to answer some of your questions you may have. We have experts in mental, behavioral health, as well as physical health. So whatever questions you have when it comes to kids in the pandemic or being a parent in the pandemic, please leave your questions in the comments and we will address them. I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves, if you don't mind. Dr. Cam, do you mind if I start with you?
No, not at all. I am Dr. Cameron Caswell, or Dr. Cam, and I am an adolescent psychologist and family coach. So I specialize in helping parents and teens reconnect and have better, more peaceful relationships.
Dr. St. Germain, can you introduce yourself from Children's?
Yep, I'm Dr. Mel St. Germain. I am a primary care pediatrician with Children's Physicians. I practice out of the West Village Point office, and I am the medical director for Children's Physicians as well.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking part. And Mary McPadden, tell us about your background.
Sure. I'm a school psychologist, and I've had the fortune of working in West Side Community Schools for the last 27 years.
All right. Again, thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Dr. St. Germain, let's kind of start with a basis, if we will, of where does it stand in terms of what do we know about the virus and kids?
So this has been kind of an ongoing experiment for almost the last year now, where this is a virus that we obviously didn't know anything about prior to January, February of 2020. We know about other coronaviruses, which are kind of common cold viruses, but this one has obviously acted quite a bit different than the common cold viruses. And so as we've gone through this experiment over the last year, we've learned a lot about how kids respond to this virus, which in general is better than adults. So adults at the older age of this end of the spectrum tend to do worse with coronavirus. Kids who get coronavirus tend to do better, and a lot of them are asymptomatic. And so as we've gone through several different iterations of what school looks like in person and remotely, we're continuing to learn a lot about how kids respond to this virus. Right now, children account for about 10 to 15% of all coronavirus cases. In Nebraska right now, it's I think at 13% for the week. What's been interesting is we haven't really seen the spread in classrooms that you would expect with that many kids in one room. And I think that's largely due to all of the masking and social distancing measures that we've put in place over the last year. Those have really worked to help keep a lot of our kids in the school building.
You know, there is a concern of kids being these silent spreaders, so to speak. You said we're not seeing a ton of spread in schools. So do you think that is because they don't spread it as much as we maybe thought, or do you think it is because of the precautions, or all the above?
Kind of all of the above. We're still, like I said, kind of collecting that data as we go along. And so there's been a couple studies that indicated that maybe kids were spreading it a lot more than we thought, and a few studies that really haven't shown that. So I don't think we can definitively say one way or the other. Certainly some people, kids and adults, are asymptomatic when they have COVID and then can potentially spread it. And so more screening, testing, and monitoring is obviously crucial to stopping the spread of coronavirus, but it doesn't appear right now that they are this huge group of silent spreaders.
Sure. And of course, as we've been saying, when there's something unknown about the virus, basically treat it as carefully as you can. And if you can have all those safety precautions in place, it'll just help everyone out. We were talking a little bit about what's being done in schools to limit the spread. Mary, can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing? What are the kids dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
When our staff and our leaders were planning in July and August to have the safest return to school, we were a little bit overwhelmed by how we were changing almost every part of our school day in order to be socially distanced and super safe. But when our students came in through the schoolhouse doors, they again helped us as a profession of educators learn how effective we are at teaching safe routines that have good outcomes for kids. Our students aren't super spreaders, they're superheroes at keeping each other safe. So they have responded very well to the procedures, and we coach them, and it's just what we do, and we can praise them, and they can be proud of how they're being safe in their learning. We know school is the best place for them to be emotionally or mentally. It has been wonderful to see that it can also be a place where kids can be here safely and still have a rigorous learning experience.
Yeah, you had some great comments there about how they can do these things together. I know my son, he's in kindergarten and he's actually at a West Side school, and sometimes talking to him about some of the precautions that are in place, I feel like it's unusual for me as a parent to hear, oh, you have a divider or you have this, but he's unfazed by it, I have to say. I mean, really, it's amazing how kids just adapt to these things. And sometimes I think we don't always give kids the credit they deserve with some of this stuff. Dr. Cam, we talked early on in the pandemic about what can we do as parents to make sure our kids are still experiencing the life we want them to experience. And you talked a lot about how there are some good things that maybe can be gained through this. Talk a little bit about that. What can we as parents see as maybe a blessing in disguise during this time?
Thanks. One of the big things that I have been telling parents and actually practicing myself is realizing that because of the pandemic, life has slowed down. It's forced us to slow down. And we've become a society of, going from here to there to this and that, and we're constantly on the move. And now that we've had to slow down, I've talked to parents that have had family dinners with their families for the first time in years, where everyone's actually there. And so realizing that, yeah, they miss their friends. Of course they miss their friends. But what is really important is their family. And being able to reconnect with our kids, even our teenagers, they want that better relationship with their families, is to use this time and take advantage of this time while it's still here to really connect with your kids.
What is your advice for parents? I've heard some parents, especially in other parts of the country, or when they have hybrid learning here locally, they're feeling overwhelmed with some of the homeschooling. What do you tell them of how to cope with these challenges?
It depends on the age. So the younger kids, we have to spend a lot more time helping them through it. And I think that's really frustrating for a lot of parents, and realizing and giving yourself some grace. And also realizing the world is not going to end if they're not getting all of their A's. I know that a lot of parents are like, no, but realizing we've got to adjust to what's going on, and we might have to step back a little bit from ourselves and for our kids, because it's hard. And realizing that it's difficult for kids to learn online. It's boring a lot of times. And I know I love the teachers. They're doing everything they can. They're pulling out every trick in the book to keep the kids engaged. It's still really difficult. So realizing that with the older kids, one of the hardest things to do as a parent is to let them own their experience. We want to encourage them to do their best, but it's their grades, not our grades. It's their learning, and focus on their learning, not our learning. And so just take a step back from that as well, and not feel the need to be on top of them all the time, because they don't actually respond well to that, and they're going to push back. When they own it, it's amazing how they'll step up to it a lot more.
Yeah. Mary, on that note, I know the teachers are incredible and they already have so much on their plates right now, but I also know they've been very receptive. I think they all are realizing too, this is new for them as well. So are you finding that, if parents are really struggling with, I can't connect in the way I normally would, what is your advice to maybe contact the school or contact a teacher?
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to work as a team together, and we know right now conditions just aren't allowing us as classroom teachers to have that real-time interface for as much time as we want with our students. So the more that parents and we can communicate with each other about what's working for their individual student, and I feel like too, the more that we can comfort parents and share with them the progress their children are making at school and how they are growing, I think it will help us all kind of put things in perspective. This isn't just a time where we're doing things differently. We're also finding some new successes. And the more that we can kind of leverage that and allow that to give us a little momentum, I think will help both home and our staff at school. So communication is super critical at this time.
Yeah, working together. Amanda wrote in, can I just express my frustration with parents who are still having scheduling sleepover birthday parties? Makes it harder for parents like me who have to say no to letting them go. So that is something that, you know, parents are working together or need to be working together, and you have to make sacrifices for your family. So do the other parents. And if we're all doing that, it hopefully makes things better. Dr. St. Germain, if someone is just tuning in now, can you explain again that, yeah, we do need to take these precautions, even if kids' numbers seem to be lower?
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons that we haven't seen the super spreader events in the schools, is because the kids in general, the expectation is there that they're wearing their masks, that they're doing the social distancing, that they've got the partitions up, and they're responding really well to that when that's the expectation. And so our responsibility as parents is to set that expectation at home too. We're doing this so that we can stay safe and so that everyone can stay safe, and so that our grandparents are, you know, still there at the end of this for us to go see them, because they're the ones who tend to have a harder time with this virus. And I think that's a common parenting struggle, right? You know, Joey's parents let him do it, and I think we're all used to that, having to deal with that, but this has amplified it, right? Because they don't get to see their friends as often, and they're struggling with that socialization piece. So I think just what I always tell my kids is, you know, every family makes the decision that's best for them, and we're gonna do what's best for our family. And it's a hard conversation to have, but I think just trying to support our kids as they're going through this.
Yeah, and that's a good point, that if you were to plan anything like that, you wouldn't be doing the same things the schools are doing. You just wouldn't, I'm sure, in your home have those same safety procedures in place. And that is obviously something we need right now when we're around anyone else. So if you can limit any interactions, that's what the experts say is the best thing to do to slow this spread. You know, one thing I've noticed, again, I talk about my own kids because it's where I'm coming from, is, you know, when something changes up in my son's schedule, he seems to get more emotional faster. It's same when he's tired, when he's growing, all of those things. And I've noticed there are times where he's 6, he knows a little bit about what's going on, but he doesn't really express it. But I see it sometimes in maybe a little extra meltdown or something. I don't know which one of you, but could someone address that about, you know, what is a child going through when they're trying to make sense of all of these big world things that we as adults are having a difficult time making sense of? What is a child going through, and how do you coach them through that?
Well, and we know if our adults are getting frustrated with how technology is kind of working or sometimes not working as consistently, when our little pumpkins are here in school or learning at home and they're trying to save something to their iPad or it doesn't work or the app is not loading, the wisest words from our leaders this fall has been, as was mentioned, to give each other grace. And our students are going to need to hear more positive reinforcement from us, that we're so proud that they're giving their best. And we need to help them reframe and celebrate their little successes, and also guard their sleep so that they're getting refueled, so that they have, you know, time to kind of let their body store all that information they've been learning and be equipped for the next day. And the more that we can kind of do creative, safe things that help them fill their bucket and kind of feel like they've got things to look forward to, or things that they can do where they're helping others and staying meaningfully connected, even if it's in a different way, that's going to be huge to help them get through those moments where there's a little bit more of a roller coaster ride.
I had brought up that we were talking about doing a forum like this, and someone weighed in saying they're concerned about the fear that's out there. And, you know, I'll admit, obviously, a lot of people say it's the media perpetuating this fear. We really try not to do that. We try to lead with facts over fear. At least I know I personally do. But, you know, there are things out there that can be scary headlines or heavy headlines, if you will. Obviously, some of the younger kids, you can shield a little more from some of that, but what is the advice of how do you have kids, and again, it varies by age, but how do you teach kids about what's going on right now in a way that maybe allows them to still be hopeful and not just be afraid? Dr. Cam, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So again, it is based on what their age is and what your children are able to handle. But I always recommend people being very transparent because kids know something's going on. And if we try to hide it and protect them, they're going to imagine what's going on. And it's typically a far worse than even what is going on, right? So their imagination can go pretty wild. So being transparent, letting them ask them questions of what they think is going on. So that kind of sets the level of what they're aware of. And then you can correct if they have any information wrong, or if they have any other questions, you can help answer that. Research it together, go online and say, let's go look at what we can find out about that to address any of their specific concerns. I also really encourage parents to let the kids have some control over their solutions. So one of the things that we've all been talking about is, and what the parent wrote in about concern with, what do I tell my kids about what we're doing? If they're part of the solution, if you all sit together, no matter what age, and say, this is our concerns, how do we make sure that we're safe? How do we make sure grandma's safe? How do we make sure, the people in our family are safe and other people are safe? And we come up with those solutions. If they're bought into it, they're going to be more adept at sticking with it. The only other thing I want to throw in is be careful of what you're saying around the kids, because if you're throwing around a lot of fear-based concerns and worries and anxieties, or complaining about what's going on, your kids are hearing all of that and they're going to end up reflecting that as well. So just being aware of what you're saying in front of them.
I love that idea of researching it together. I think that's very powerful in teaching your kids where are the good places to look for information. The AAP has a good parent website called healthychildren.org that has a lot of COVID information on it. Children's Hospital's website has a lot of COVID information on it. So directing them to those appropriate places to find that, and talking about how, not everything you read on Facebook is true, and helping build those skills as well.
Yeah, I think that's important. Erica wrote in headlines like Santa and Mrs. Claus infected 50 kids with COVID. I probably shouldn't even say that out loud. But yeah, I mean, things like that. I'm of the belief that right now what we're going through is dramatic in itself. In a headline, you don't need to try to overhype it. It is what it is. So yeah, we have to protect our kids from those things as well. Jenny wrote, "Hi Jenny, thanks for doing this, y'all." So yeah, we want to get information out there. We want a chance for people to be able to ask their questions and weigh in on what's going on, because you're right, those headlines don't always help. I find with my kids too, it's been interesting to talk to them about, they don't necessarily understand a vaccine fully, but they get vaccines, so they know what that's like. So I've explained we're waiting for something like that, and we're getting that now, and try to explain that part of the process of hopefully that will help things. So what you can tell your kids that they can relate to, I think helps as well. Dr. St. Germain, we've seen some cases of the MIS-C. Again, we don't want to cause the fear here. It's a very low number of cases, but what is that? If anyone had any questions about what is that and what are we talking about in terms of numbers?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it is rare, but it's kind of scary. And so it stands for multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, MIS-C. And it is an inflammatory response that occurs after someone's been infected with COVID. And a lot of times these kids don't have symptoms with their initial infection, but 3 to 4 weeks later, some kids develop these symptoms. The most common ones we see are fever and belly pain. But we can see any range of symptoms of any of the systems of the body. So it can be respiratory, they can have coughs, they can have the stomach pain, they can have rashes. And so anyone who has an unexplained fever and other symptoms that go along with it, we're thinking about MISC and maybe doing some labs to check it. And those kids that we do identify, I can't give you an exact number. I want to say it's somewhere between 30 and 50 kids in Omaha that have been treated here for MISC. We are making sure that they get the appropriate care, which is really supportive. It's just kind of supporting their body systems until they can get through that illness.
Sure. Yeah, and you're right. It's just important to be aware of, because if you start seeing those symptoms, you might want to get it checked out for sure. Sydney wrote, hi, Sydney. How do you explain the importance of wearing masks to little ones just walking into daycare? They get frustrated and pull them off. So Mary, maybe you can talk about that, since I'm sure that's been talked about on the school level of, again, I'm sure you have different challenges with masks based on age.
We are a school where we have, kindergarten through 6th grade, and we even wondered ourselves as educators. We thought maybe this is crazy to expect tiny little 5-year-olds to be wearing a mask their entire in-person learning day. And what we've noticed is when their parents are on board and the students see throughout the schoolhouse, everyone's doing it. We've been amazed ourselves that they're not only immediately compliant, but they're also doing it with a positive attitude. And I feel like that's just one of those instances where we're taking this moment that we didn't plan on, and we're using it as an opportunity to kind of students can be models of resilience and strength for each other. So if they're hearing adults say things that are discouraging or defeating, then we kind of know what the outcome's going to be. But I feel like especially when they're in our schoolhouse and it's just kind of the routine of the business of what we do, it's something they just don't even give too much thought to. We had students say they were amazed after the first weeks that their students were in school that their kids aren't coming home complaining. I think because of the way we ended March, April, May with not having students on campus, our students are okay with these new norms for now of how we just do things so that we can be super safe and smart in school. So I think about what kids are hearing, what they're seeing with the models around them, and just practice in little bits, making sure that they have a mask that properly fits them. Nothing's more discouraging than having a mask that's slipping and sliding and they're having to think about it rather than just think about their brain, their hands, and their fun.
Yeah, and I noticed my 6-year-old does really well with his mask. My 4-year-old, and that's interesting because different states have different rules. Nebraska, in Omaha, at least the mandate is 5, whereas in Iowa it's 2. So in terms of ages, so for the even smaller kids, younger than school age, I don't know, Dr. St. Germain, should we, as parents, maybe assume that sometimes the little ones might not always get it right, but we're at least teaching them, or what approach do we take then?
Yeah, and so the American Academy of Pediatrics has set the guideline or the recommendation that all kids over the age of 2 really can and should try to keep a mask on. And so, and in my office now, they're not in my office for an entire day, but they're in there for a while, and they're doing great, really. If it's that expectation that we're just going to put this on and it's not a big deal, most of them do really, really well. And the ones that don't, the ones that are resistant initially, then we work with them individually on increasing their mask tolerance. So I've told parents to have them wear it while they're on their screen time. You can't have your half-hour of screen time for the day unless you're wearing your mask if you need to practice and get used to the feel of having it on your face. With the younger kids, they can play with them and put them on their dolls and things like that and make it less of a requirement and more of kind of something we do, and maybe even something we can play with while we're getting used to it.
I have a few suggestions too I'd love to share.
Sure, go ahead.
So with the little ones too, or even some of the older ones, 2 of the things you can also think of, they have so many creative masks now, and little kids love to dress up. So if you can find masks that kind of help them dress up and they are different characters, that might encourage them to wear them a little bit more, or find a way to turn it into a game. They love games, they love challenges. So if we make it fun for them and it takes it away from like having to do it, even older kids are more likely to wear them a little bit longer and not complain about it quite as much.
Yeah, I mean, I ordered masks for my kids, and I remember my daughter's very into pink right now. And so, I was showing her a couple different examples, and she said that one, the pink one. So it was like, I'm gonna get the pink one because she's more likely to wear it, and that's what we're going for.
Mhm.
Jenny wrote, "It's important in our family to provide empathy and grace during moments of big or negative emotions, but we're seeing more meltdowns and bad behavior during times when we need actual cooperation or progress, like dinner time, morning routine." My husband texted me today saying, "Oh, we're having a morning," so I feel that. Any suggestions on how to balance a connecting yet consistent response? Who wants to take that one of, if we are seeing more of those meltdowns these days, how do we address that? Dr. Cam, you pointed yourself, so you'll
Sure,
go first,
yeah.
but maybe we'll do a round robin on this.
Go around because I think this is all different age. And I know with teenagers, to all ages, but teenagers too are having a lot more meltdowns. And I think it's really important to spend some significant time just listening and empathizing and realizing that their emotions are really big anyway. And it's a lot of times it's very difficult for them to hold those in. So allowing them to express their emotions, just being empathetic and saying, oh my gosh, yeah, that is really tough. I'm sorry that that's happening. And not trying to fix it, just trying to listen. I think even with little kids, they just want to hear their emotions being validated. Another thing that's really it's growing a lot more, and I'm teaching this to a lot of my clients, is mindfulness and breathing. And I know even just this morning, I was teaching my daughter, we were doing the hand where you breathe in and you breathe out, and you go up and down your fingers. And little kids can do this, teens can do this, but this helps relax your mind from the emotion part of it, and it enables them to just settle those emotions.
Yeah. Mary, do you care to address this one?
Oh, absolutely. And I think especially for our children who are trying to learn in school in a new way, there's a lot of stress and responsibility and burden that's being put on them that we need to recognize and help them with. Our students who aren't learning in classrooms in real time with us, they're having to problem solve and recall and get materials together and sometimes take things between home and school and back and forth again. And I think in addition to just giving them grace and to listening to them, we need to help them problem solve and also stop and celebrate what they have done really well and help them to see like, oh my gosh, they are going to be so equipped in their future, not just with a couple of tools for coping, but if we manage this well and help them hone those skills for, okay, I'm going to give myself the rest I need. I'm going to give myself the breaks I need. I'm going to help myself recall and know what I can do and speak to myself positively in my head. They're not going to have just a toolbox for getting through their future and handling challenges. They're going to have a garage full of tools to how to handle things in the future. And so just listen to them and help them problem solve.
Yeah. And I think some of those examples are true for really all of us as humans. I know I'm someone recently where I'm like, I need to get a workout in or do some yoga or something for my brain. I also, you were talking about validation. I've said that to my husband, like, I just need you to say everything is going to be okay, even if I'm saying it to myself. I just need to hear it from someone else. So yeah, I think sometimes it's realizing that, yeah, it's just a tough time for people.
And as an adult, we do those things to kind of help ourselves. And
yeah.
we say, oh, I need this, so I'm going to give myself that. But this is the time when we really want to be overt and say out loud in front of our kids. So we're showing for them like, whoa, that really didn't go like how I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
Whoa. And then have them hear how we are coping and managing. And sometimes the smartest thing we can do is ask for help. Sometimes the smartest thing we can do is just take a little break. I'm going to come back and try this again later. And the more that they can see us doing that, they'll give themselves the permission to slow their roll, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to put an exclamation point after what Mary just said, and it's about modeling. It's about what are we showing our kids, and it doesn't matter what age they are. They're watching us. And so if we are taking care of ourselves, if we are finding ways to reduce our stress, if we are communicating and talking about what's going on in a healthy way rather than a very negative, complaining way, our kids are going to learn from us and they're going to start adapting as well.
Yeah. I like that about being kind of big with it too, because sometimes maybe I'm doing those things for myself, but maybe I should be saying that in the home. Hey, I need to go do this because it makes me feel bad or feel better and I had a tough day or something so that, yeah, my kids hear, oh, it's okay to have a tough day. When you have a tough day, deal with it in one of these ways. So you're right, that modeling, sometimes I don't know that I'm as, overt with it as I could be. So that's definitely will take that into play. Dr. St. Germain, are you seeing, I mean, obviously pediatric office, but you hear from parents a lot. So in different ways, are you seeing and hearing more of those behavioral, emotional concerns more than just physical concerns these days?
Absolutely. We screen all of our teenagers for kids 12 and up actually with a depression screening questionnaire. And if they're showing any symptoms of anxiety, we do an anxiety questionnaire as well. And we're seeing a lot higher scores on those, unfortunately. And sometimes it's just acknowledging that, like, wow, those kids that were doing okay, and sort of using their coping skills, and then their coping skills kind of got thrown out the window, right? So they don't have all of those things that normally mitigate that. And so just talking through that and saying, look, what can you do? Problem solving with them. What would help you? What do we have control over, and what can we do that will make this better? And then yes, the behavioral meltdowns with the younger kids as well. And when you're stuck at home with them 24/7, when that wasn't the case before, it becomes a little bit more challenging for parents to try to model that good behavior all the time too. So making sure that we give ourselves that grace as well.
Sure. We just received actually a news release about some vaccinations coming to children's, and that's for staff members. Where do we stand at this when it comes to kids and a vaccine? So far, the vaccines we've heard of have not been tested or approved for children. Any gauge of when that could come?
Yeah, so they're planning to enroll kids 12 to 18 in vaccine trials this spring. I think that the vaccine trials for the younger kids under 16 will probably come more like summer. I know there's a lot of interest in trying to get the vaccine approved for kids before school starts in the fall. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but that's, I think, a good goal. There's been a few kids from 16 to 18 that have gotten the vaccine and have done fine with it, and that's sort of what led to this trial for kids 12 to 18. But it'll hopefully be within the next year. I don't think I can pin it down any more than that. What we're trying to do right now is make sure that those around them are immunized, so all of our healthcare workers and things like that, so that we can make their environment safer for them.
Yeah, because you were talking earlier about how COVID just seems to even show itself differently in kids than in adults. So I assume when it comes to testing, they really need to make sure they are testing the younger groups too before. Makes sense there. Dr. Cam, like I said, last time we were talking, I remember it was coming up on graduations from the spring. That was a while ago. It was right when the pandemic started. I think that's something that we need to take into account too and remember is it's okay to acknowledge with kids that they are missing things. Talk a little bit about that as kids are missing out on some things. What might they be going through and how can we kind of support them through that?
Yeah, so allowing them to mourn the things that they're not able to do. I mean, my daughter's a freshman in high school, and so it's been a tough year because she's been looking forward to going into the high school and all the stuff that comes with high school, and she's not getting any of that. And so it's really acknowledging the fact that they are missing out on that. On the other flip side is finding ways to bring new experiences and celebration. Like FOCOs were really popular. So a lot of kids were having very small, socially distant, wearing the masks, fake homecomings. So they were experiencing that. Finding cool things that are online that they can do, different experiences. I know a lot of celebrities even are doing one-on-ones that you can get with people. So there's different experiences you can have. So realizing, yes, this is not cool that you're missing out on this, and letting them mourn that. And then we had talked about problem solving, like what are you missing out about that? And what do we have control over? And what other cool things can we do instead?
Mary, I've heard people, parents talking about, and I've wondered it too, are kids through this time period going to be changed by what they're experiencing? They're not seeing, you think of little babies. I have friends that have had babies during the pandemic, and they're like, they're not seeing people's whole faces. And, or in school, there is this distance, the physical interaction might not be there. Um, you know, we have to do it now, but what is the thought? Do we think this could impact them long term, this period of social distancing and things like that?
I think all we can do at this point is look at this time as if, our students are kind of been diving in deep into a pool, and we need to look at these next few months, January, February, March, as times when we are pushing off the bottom of the pool, and how can we just come to the surface with the greatest success. So our students might be different than if we had not had this experience, but how can we leverage that to make this an opportunity? We want our students to have appreciation for those times when they've been able to get their voices creatively distanced and safely raised in song with each other and grabbing their instruments and producing music. It's just something they do and they have a greater appreciation for when they can hear each other in concert, even if it's online. They're savoring that more. And I think let's use this as an opportunity to, what are the meaningful things that really have value that we can really look forward to and enjoy and savor differently? Some of our kids have gone through and the routines or the rituals have had to change a little bit to be safe, but it doesn't mean we can't just celebrate that. At school, when we were usually having like a time when we were like do this race around the outside of our building, how we set that up had to be different. But we still encouraged each other. Instead of standing there shouting, we made signs and posted them along the way, or we wrote on the sidewalk encouraging words. And our students, more this year than any other year, have at the tip of their tongue, we got this. So I think we leverage ourselves to have a little bit more success and more strength and more resilience in our future. That's all we can do.
Yeah, great answer there. I think to wrap up, I would love to have all of you kind of give a final thought of when it comes to parenting, what is your advice or pep talk overall to parents right now? And or if there's any topic I missed that you would like to address, feel free. Not to put you on the spot right away, but Dr. St. Germain, do you mind starting?
Sure. No, I think we covered all of the high points. I think just the thing that I always try to remind myself is that kids are really resilient and flexible if we give them the opportunity and the environment to be that way. And so, yes, this is looking very different this year. I was just thinking about that with my own kids. Like in 5 years, you're going to look back and think, remember that year we had to wear masks the whole year? And it will shape who they become, but not necessarily in a bad way. I mean, I think this is a good opportunity to teach resilience to our kids.
Sure. Yep, we got to look on the bright side of things. Mary, do you mind going next?
Yeah, you bet. We've always known that sleep is hugely important to helping us stay physically healthy, but also emotionally equipped. And at this time when there are so many things we can do online, one of the best things we can do is for ourselves as parents and to make sure our kids are guarding that sleep time. Secondly, model for your child how you are handling things and let your wall down and show them how you are being flexible and resilient in moments so that they can feel better about giving themselves that same grace. And help your child understand how they should be proud of themselves, not just for getting through or surviving this, but for thriving through this.
I like that. We do. We keep saying getting through it, but really it's part of our life. We don't want to just miss this section of our life and just say, oh, those days are gone. No, we can actually find good moments in there. Dr. Cam.
Sure. So one of the things, just to go with that, I tell, I'll talk to a lot of teens and I say, think about this. When you're my age and you've got your kids in high school, they're going to be writing papers about this time. What are you going to tell them about it? Think about it from that perspective. And that's kind of a fun way. Like we're experiencing history right now. They're going to be talking about this. But really, two things I want to add to what everyone else has said to help the kids through is One is finding ways that they can gain control, because a lot of the meltdowns, a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the frustrations is because they feel a lack of control. And so when we're focused on telling them what they need to do and making sure they're doing this and that, it's not giving them some control. So allowing and finding ways that they have a say in what's going on and that they can find things that they're able to take control of elsewhere in their lives. And the other one is practicing gratitude. And gratitude has been shown to actually change the wiring in our brains. And when we are grateful for something, you can't be anxious and grateful at the same time. So putting in place some sort of practice of gratitude, whether it's at the dinner table going through and just saying, what's one or two things you're grateful for today? I've had gratitude jars where people put in what they're grateful for each day, and when they're feeling really down, you can pull those out. But practicing gratitude throughout all of this will help kids and adults stay in the right frame of mind.
Definitely. Never a bad time of year to be grateful, but definitely a good time of year to be grateful right now too during the holidays. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you taking some time out of your day to help with this discussion. I think it's an important topic as we all try to really help each other and support each other as we go through this together. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to end the broadcast now.